Reiner Braun, a name synonymous with the word conflict, but not just in terms of the war raging between Marley and the audience. No, Reiner is a man whose greatest battlefield is within himself. There are few characters in Attack on Titan who embody the duality of human nature as deeply as Reiner. He is the soldier torn between duty and identity, between being the hero and the villain, never fully knowing which side of himself is real. Reiner's conflict is not one we can easily separate from his environment. Born into the militaristic regime of Marley, he was raised with the understanding that his sole purpose as an Eldian was to serve the very people who oppressed him. From a young age, Reiner was indoctrinated into believing that the only way to redeem himself, to prove his worth, was to become a warrior, a title that would grant him not just honor but a sense of belonging. Yet, this belief in redemption through duty is what shatters him. Reiner's journey is a study in psychological fragmentation. The Reiner we see before the fall of War Maria is confident, heroic in his self-perception. He's on a mission, driven by a purpose that, at the time, he fully embraces. He believes he's a hero for Marley, someone who will bring salvation to his people. But once behind enemy lines, living among the very people he was raised to hate, the cracks begin to form. The trauma of his mission doesn't hit him all at once. It's slow, methodical, creeping. What happens to Reiner is the gradual erosion of identity. We often think of split personalities as an overused trope. But with Reiner, it's the most natural and horrifying result of circumstances. By the time we see him on Paradis Island, Reiner has become two people. The loyal warrior of Marley and the compassionate comrade to the scouts. A valuable soldier. This fracture is nowhere more evident than in Reiner's interactions with Eren. The bond they share is a mirror of Reiner's internal struggle. Eren becomes everything Reiner is and is not. Someone who knows his enemy yet still chooses to fight them. It's almost as if Reiner, in his connection with Eren, is seeking an answer to the question that plagues him. Who am I supposed to be? When Reiner and Bertolt reveal their identities as the armored and colossal titans, it's a moment that shatters the world Eren thought he understood. The friends who fought beside him, who he trusted with his life, are now suddenly the enemies who destroyed his home. The very titans responsible for the carnage he had witnessed as a child. The initial revelation happens with shocking nonchalance. Reiner, exhausted by his own internal conflict, simply admits it. The conversation that follows when Eren is captured is charged with betrayal. Eren is chained, forced to face the people who had been his comrades, and it's in this moment that the true duality of Reiner's character is exposed. As they sit together, Reiner in his fractured state talks to Eren like a comrade, still trying to reconcile his role as both warrior and soldier. This is not the Reiner of Marley, the warrior who infiltrated the wars with cold precision. This is a broken man, so fractured by his experiences that he doesn't know who he's supposed to be anymore. He tells Eren that he never wanted any of this, that the mission, the distraction wasn't his choice. The guilt is palpable, hanging in the air between them, and yet, Eren's response is not one of empathy or understanding. And how could it be? To Eren, Reiner is the embodiment of everything he has hated for years, the very thing he swore to destroy. In Eren's eyes, there is no complexity in this moment. Reiner is a monster, and monsters deserve to die. But what makes this conversation so important is that it marks the first time Eren is forced to confront the human side of his enemies. Reiner's brokenness, his regret, lays bare the cost of this war on both sides. It's the first seed of doubt planted in Eren's mind, a seed that won't fully blossom until much later, when he himself becomes the very thing he once despised. If Reiner's identity crisis is the core of his character, guilt is the fuel that keeps it burning. The burden of guilt is one of the most powerful forces in shaping human behavior, and in Reiner's case, it manifests as self-loathing covered by duty. Every action Reiner takes, whether it's betraying his comrades, infiltrating the wars, or killing innocents, is weighed down by the overwhelming guilt of knowing that deep inside, he's not the warrior he set out to become. When Berthold says that they are neither heroes nor villains, it's as much a comment on Reiner as it is on themselves. Reiner's guilt culminates in his breakdown during his time with the Scouts. We watch as he shifts between personalities, unable to reconcile his sense of responsibility as a warrior with the bonds he formed. When he tells his friends that he is the Armored Titan, he isn't just confessing a secret. He's revealing the fractured state of his mind. He's begging for some kind of release, some way to make sense of the role he's forced himself into. The tragedy of Marco's death isn't just in the way he dies, but in how Reiner's psyche crumbles around it. Reiner the warrior understands immediately that Marco is a liability. He's the Armored Titan. He's Marley's chosen warrior. This is war, and sacrifices are inevitable. Yet at that very moment, there's another Reiner inside him. The Reiner who lived as Marco's comrade within the wars. The soldier who fought by Marco's side, trained with him, laughed with him. This Reiner is horrified, stunned into helplessness. So what does Reiner do? He suppresses it. The warrior takes over. Marco is disarmed, left to die a slow and cruel death at the jaws of a Titan. In that moment, Reiner can't even confront the weight of his actions. Instead, he dissociates, creating a barrier in his mind between the soldier and the warrior. The act of killing Marco is the point at which Reiner splits himself completely. It's not just Marco dying, it's Reiner's psyche fracturing. What makes Reiner's guilt so profound is that it's tied not just to his actions, but to his identity. Unlike characters like Zeke or Eren, who hold on to their ideologies with a sense of finality, Reiner doesn't have the luxury of certainty. Every decision he makes only pushes him further into the abyss of his own confusion. He's the soldier who never wanted to be a soldier, the warrior who never truly believed in the cause he was fighting for. In many ways, Reiner represents the everyman, the person trapped by societal expectations, by the roles we are told to play, never quite able to break free. Years later in Marley, we see the second conversation, a reunion, but one in which the roles have been reversed. Eren is no longer the naive, vengeful boy who simply wants to kill Titans. He's colder, more calculated, and willing to use whatever means necessary to achieve his goal. The setting is intimate and unsettling. A small room beneath a building in Marley, where Eren, now a monster in his own right, confronts Reiner, the man who once shattered his world. What's striking about this conversation is how different Eren's demeanor is. He speaks to Reiner calmly, almost compassionately. There's no anger, no outbursts of rage. Instead, Eren draws parallels between their experiences, acknowledging that they are, in essence, the same. Both were victims of a cruel world. Both were shaped into weapons by their respective nations, and both have committed atrocities in the name of those nations. Eren's calmness here is chilling because it reflects his complete embrace of the cycle of violence. He no longer sees Reiner as an enemy, but rather as a kindred spirit, a man trapped in the same unending cycle of hatred and war. Eren even thanks Reiner for pushing him down this path, as if to say, "You made me who I am today." There's no ear acceptance in his words, as if Eren has come to terms with the fact that they are all doomed to repeat the same mistakes. But for Reiner, this conversation is devastating. Unlike Eren, who has fully embraced his role in this conflict, Reiner has been consumed by guilt. He no longer wants to fight. He's exhausted, broken by years of internal and external conflict. When Eren tells him that they are the same, it's not a moment of solidarity for Reiner. It's a condemnation. Reiner doesn't want to be a monster anymore. He is desperate for redemption, for an end to the endless cycle of violence that has consumed his life. The look on Reiner's face during this conversation is one of pure despair. He knows that Eren is beyond saving, and worse, he knows that nothing he says can change what's about to happen. As Eren prepares to unleash the rumbling, Reiner is powerless. A man who has lost everything, his comrades, his sense of purpose, and now, any hope for peace. But what really started all this? What drove Reiner to this extent to begin with? Reiner was born from a forbidden love. His mother Karina, an Eldian, and his father a Marleyan. From the very beginning, the relationship between Reiner's parents was doomed by the societal constructs of Marley. Eldians were considered devils, an inferior race to the Marleyans, and the relationship between an Eldian and a Marleyan was not just frowned upon, but dangerous. As a result, Reiner's father wanted nothing to do with them. This rejection became the cornerstone of Reiner's identity. He was a child born from sin, not by his own actions, but by the very nature of his bloodline. And it was his mother who made sure that Reiner internalized this from a young age. She filled Reiner's head with the idea that they were not worthy, that their life was a tragedy because they were Eldians. She didn't just accept this reality, she embraced it. To her, their misery could be explained by a single fact. They were monsters, and if they weren't Eldians, things would have been different. Karina's words had a devastating effect on Reiner. She made him believe that his very existence was something to be ashamed of. Reiner wasn't just Reiner, he was the manifestation of the hatred between Marleyans and Eldians. His father's absence became more than just a personal rejection. It became a symbol of the Eldian curse. But Reiner, as a young boy, couldn't bear the weight of this self-loathing his mother tried to sell to him. He couldn't accept the idea that his family was beyond redemption. So, he formed a new dream. A dream where he could prove his worth as a hero, where he could change what he was. Reiner believed that if he could become a warrior, if he could earn the honor of becoming one of Marley's titans, then maybe, just maybe, his father would accept him. Maybe there could be a family. It's important to understand that this wasn't just about pride. For Reiner, this was about survival. His very sense of self was at stake. Reiner didn't just want to become a warrior. He needed to become one. He needed to prove to his father and to himself that he wasn't a monster, that he wasn't just an Eldian. He could be something greater. But what Reiner didn't understand at the time was that this need for acceptance was the first step on a path to his own destruction. Reiner's desire to become a warrior wasn't just about strength or honor. It was about transforming his identity. By becoming a titan, by serving Marley, he believed he could transcend the very thing that made him an outcast, his Eldian bloodline. This is where the tragedy deepens. Reiner didn't understand that becoming a warrior wasn't going to change how his father saw him. His father didn't reject Reiner because he wasn't strong enough. He rejected him because Reiner's existence reminded him of his own sins. But Reiner didn't see that. He believed in the lie, that if he became a warrior, he could erase his heritage, erase his Eldian blood. And so he embraced the very system that oppressed him. Reiner became a tool for Marley, blindly following orders in the hopes that it would bring him the validation he craved. He was so immersed in this propaganda that he reminds Falco that it is an honor to inherit one of the 9 titans, and what the consequences would be if his dissatisfaction is discovered, which leads Falco to recite the creed. But the damage wasn't just from Marley's indoctrination. It was his mother's voice, constantly reminding him that they were cursed, that they were inherently flawed because of their blood. This internalized self-hatred drove Reiner to extremes, pushing him to sacrifice everything, even his own life expectancy, for a chance at approval. In his mother's eyes, the only path to redemption was to serve Marley, to prove that even a devil could be useful. And Reiner, ever the dutiful son and eager little hero, took on that burden without question. He believed that if he could endure the pain of becoming a warrior, if he could fight and kill for Marley, it would make him worthy of love. But as we see throughout Reiner's arc, His pursuit of acceptance was always doomed to fail. No matter how hard he fought, no matter how many enemies he defeated, it was never enough. His father's rejection was final. Marley's rejection was final. And with every battle, with every mission, Reiner was forced to confront the fact that his dream was built on a lie, and he was simply a tool. Throughout Attack on Titan, one of the most striking aspects of Reiner's character is his desire for death. It's not just that he's tired, or that he feels guilty, it's that death for him represents the only escape from his fractured existence. It's telling that every time Reiner tries to end his life, something pulls him back. It's not always something external though. Often, it's the faint glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, he can still find redemption. Reiner's desire for death is, at its heart, a desire for resolution. In a world where he's constantly put between identities, death becomes the only option that promises peace. It's chilling when you think about it. Here is a character who has fought so hard to survive, to accomplish his mission, yet at every turn, survival feels like a curse rather than a victory. But Reiner's survival isn't meaningless. Each time he chooses to live, even after begging for an end, it's a testament to the complexity of his character. Reiner doesn't just want to die because of guilt. He wants to die because he can bear the weight of his own contradictions, the weight of his own sins. But despite that, he continues, not out of duty, not out of belief in his mission, but perhaps out of the faintest hope that there is still something left for him to fight for, that maybe there might be some redemption for him. What makes Reiner truly tragic is that even by the end of the series, his conflict is never fully resolved. He's a man who, even after the truth of the world is revealed, continues to fight. He fights not because he has faith in the cause, but because it's the only thing he knows how to do. Reiner's story is one of perpetual motion, a struggle without end. And maybe it's something he deserves for his naivete. No, maybe it is something he deserves. Most times, it's easy to take the path of death in a character's redemption. But what Isayama does here is something unique. A character who has committed so many atrocities but yet continues to live, and continues to observe the ramifications of those atrocities. He's not easily accepted. No. He has to make up for what he's done. He has to redeem himself. In the final moments of the series, as we watch Reiner march into battle once more against Eren, we realize that his story was never about finding peace. It was about the struggle. Again, the endless, brutal struggle to find meaning in a world that refuses to give it to him. Reiner Braun, the man who wears the mask of a warrior, but underneath is just a broken boy looking for a place to call home. He is truly a profound character.